So it looks like Jean finally got that warrior's wolf tail that he always wanted. Only took him, what, 30 years, give or take, in another world to accomplish that? Yeah, we really need to talk about Jean's appearance at the end of episode 5 in RWBY Volume 9. Although many of us predicted that Jean was going to be the Rusted Knight, or at the very least what we knew at the time was the knight that appeared in the Volume 9 trailers and teasers, none of us really expected that he would show up looking older, at least to this degree. It makes sense that his armor would be rusted with this much age, but the fact that his hair is white and he does actually look 20 to 30 years older certainly implies that Jean has been in the Ever After for a very long time. And given this and what we've seen thus far in Volume 9, I'm pretty sure that Jean is the Rusted Knight that was referred to in the fairy tale of the girl who fell through the world. That he is in fact that very same Rusted Knight that Alex met during her journey. And for his part, Jean knows Alex's story firsthand. At least for the parts that he was able to interact with Alex. He likely has a vast understanding of the Ever After, how things work here. He knows that there's only a single Jabberwocker, or there should only be one at a time. Maybe there have been others in the past, maybe there are others in the future, but he knows how things work and will be able to introduce that to Team RWBY. And he is the exact same Jean that we have known throughout all of these volumes, because he recognizes Team RWBY. He greeted them at the end of the episode like he was greeting old friends. Team RWBY, you finally made it. Friends that he hasn't seen in decades. Jean has been in the Ever After for a very long time, and I think it does make sense that he is the exact same Rusted Knight that Alex met during her journey through the Ever After. But Jean stayed behind because he knew eventually that Team RWBY would arrive, that the rest of his friends would make it there. But considering Jean fell last in the crossroads, how would he arrive first? And not only first, but preceding Team RWBY and Neo by decades? Well, considering we've seen that the Ever After seems to be almost a living organism in and of itself, repurposing not only the beings of the Ever After, but presumably even the acres, the specific areas of the world itself could be reshaped and remolded to fit different purposes, the Ever After has some sort of its own goal or own idea in mind for what it wants to do. I don't know if there's an end goal in mind, or if it's just an ever-changing experiment of the gods, or something of that nature. We'll probably find out more in the last half of Volume 9. Perhaps Jean knows something about the nature of the Ever After that he'll be able to share with Team RWBY, and in turn us as well, but for now, it does seem like the Ever After is one living organism. And from the very beginning, it's been shown that the order in which people fall into the Ever After does not matter to the order in which they arrive. This was shown in the very first couple minutes of the first episode of Volume 9. Even when we got those first couple minutes back in the summer, that was shown, when RWBY and Neo were falling at the exact same time. They were falling through the void together, even though there was a good at least 30 seconds between when Neo fell and when RWBY fell, because Blake was able to catch RWBY as she was falling, and then Cinder cut the ribbon, and then both Blake and RWBY fell together. But RWBY ended up falling alongside Neo, not Blake, so the order in which they fell never mattered. So, Jean arriving first, that makes sense, but, you know, 30 years in the past definitely implies that the Ever After had something else in store for him. And in fact, it seems implied by the opening of Volume 9 as well that he arrived well before Alex. When we see Alex waking up on the beach, there is already a set of footprints leading on to the island. And although we had no idea what that meant at the time, it did imply that someone was there before Alex got there. Now we know who that is, that being Jean. And odds are, he had to arrive a number of years before Alex did for his armor to have rusted by the time Alex encountered him. Because he was known as the Rusted Knight, so, you know, if his armor was already rusted by that point, he might have arrived 10 years before Alex. Alex came to the Ever After, and then it's been 20 years since then, and then Team RWBY arrived. But in that same scene, after Alex wakes up, she starts making her way onto the island, then we see Crescent Rose wash up on the beach. This could just be implying that, you know, the order of events is some mysterious person arrives first, who we now know as Jean, makes their way onto the island, then Alex arrives, then Team RWBY comes later. It could also mean that Crescent Rose arrived on the Ever After some number of years in the past as well, but that may not make as much sense. Though, there could be other things to be explained with Crescent Rose as well. I have an idea or two as to how RWBY's going to get that back and the significance that that's going to play. But one thing we know for certain is Jean has some other role to play. The Ever After has something in store for him. He has not ascended. He hasn't lost any of his memories. He hasn't been changed by the Ever After, just by the experiences he's had in the Ever After. Adapted to his surroundings, learned how to function in this world, and become what I would assume is the guardian of this marketplace. If the area where he brought Team RWBY and Juniper to, his trusty steed, a rabbit with antlers it looks like, or antelope as people were telling me on stream, which by the way, link in the description below if you guys want to come and talk RWBY on stream or see some video games played live. If that is indeed where he lives, or at least has set up camp, then we know that this is kind of his home base. This is where Alex likely would have encountered him as well, and maybe he's taken up the mantle of protector against the Jabberwocker. It does seem like Jean has some connection to the Jabberwocker, whether it's connected to him personally or just the role that he fulfills in this story. In the Jabberwocky poem, there is a knight that ends up slaying the Jabberwocker using the Vorpal sword. I made a theory on this previously, and I think that Jean is filling that role here, that he's been in conflict and in combat with the Jabberwocker for the past 30 or so years. And he just hasn't gotten that Vorpal sword to deal that finishing blow yet. Because the weapon he's still wielding is his rusted Crocea Mors, which is quite significant. This is the blade that broke at the end of Volume 8, just after he took Penny's life. This could easily be implying, along with the other image of Jean that we saw in the Volume 9 opening, that this is something that he cannot move past. Jean is kind of stuck in time. Though not really, obviously, because he is able to age, but more so that he's not able to move past that point in time, that 11th hour where he ended up pushing the 11 to a 12. Instead of saving someone, he finished their life during that last chance to save them. I made a video on that as well. I'll link it up in the corner if you guys want to check that out. But given the fact that after all of this time spent in the Ever After, Jean has not upgraded his sword at all or gotten it reforged into something else, is pretty telling that he's kind of stuck at a point where he cannot move past. I understand why Jean wouldn't want to give up his armor or give up his blade entirely, rather wanting it reforged into something else or at least refurbished, because that armor that he had was, first of all, passed down to him by his grandfather who fought in the Great War, and also had Pyrrha's metal forged into it. It has a lot of meaning for him, so I completely understand why he would want to hang on to it. But the fact that he would let it deteriorate, let it rust to the point that, well, that's the moniker that he's known by now, he's become the Rusted Knight, well, that does imply that he's kind of hung up on it, that he's stuck at that point and isn't able to move past that. So now that he's encountered Team RWBY, he'll be able to get that off of his chest and maybe be able to start moving forward again. Be able to have his armor refurbished, possibly get his sword reforged, or get a new one. I like the idea of keeping his old sword because of the significance that it has, but having it reforged into something else, which we do know that reforging and repurposing is something that is quite significant in the Ever After. And given that we did see a blacksmith in the last episode, perhaps Jean will be able to get a weapon remade from her. Though, hopefully not having to lose who he is or change too much. Though, for Jean to actually return to Remnant, he's either going to return as an old man, which would have some interesting interactions with, his teammates, Ren and Nora, as well as everyone else that he knows, and his siblings. How would his sisters react to having either their older brother or younger brother become their much older brother? Also, Jean might even be older than his own parents now, which is odd to think about. He would become Uncle Jean instead of Brother Jean. Like, that would that has some interesting implications. But for Jean to actually return as the Jean that he once was, there's a couple of different ways that this could happen. Either Jean will have to ascend in the Ever After and return as the younger version of himself, the hero that he always wanted to be. Perhaps his memories would be fiddled with at that point. I hope not, because he has all of his memories of Pyrrha, and those are quite significant to his character, how he's grown since Volume 3, and the impact that Pyrrha has had on his life. So I would really prefer that he not lose those, and I think Jean feels the exact same way, but that might be the only way for him to return to his younger self. Though there might be another way, simply by just leaving the Ever After, you are returned to your own world, in this case returned to Remnant, at the exact same age that you were when you arrived, but with your memories of your experiences in the Ever After intact. And in Jean's case especially, when he returns to Remnant, he will not be the same person anymore, because he's now in a 19-year-old body with 50 years of experience. Yeah, that's going to have some effects on his interactions with the people that he used to know, and is now going to have to get reacquainted with after so much time apart. At least on his end, maybe not necessarily on theirs. But on that note, there will likely be some time that has passed for the people on Remnant. If Alex did come to the Ever After within the last 20 to 30 years in the Ever After's time, considering the story of the girl who fell through the world, the story that Alex wrote when she returned to Remnant, is something that has been around for probably hundreds of years, there's definitely a bit of a time difference there. Though also, Jean arrived before Alex, even though falling later in Remnant's history, so things may not exactly work in a 1-to-1 scenario, or 1 to 10, or whatever the time difference is going to end up being, but I'd like to think at least a couple weeks to a month or two has passed in Remnant, while Team RWBY have been spending a number of days in the Ever After. But we'll have to wait and see when they eventually return, and what events have taken place since their departure at the end of Volume 8. Regardless of what that time difference is going to be, though, it's going to be interesting if Old Man Jean comes back to Remnant. Jean's appearance at the end of this episode has so many implications for the story moving forward in the Ever After. The fact that he is likely the Rusted Knight that had interactions with Alex, that will probably see a flashback to Alex's time in the Ever After and her first encounter with Jean. Likely we'll even see a flashback to before that, of Jean arriving in the Ever After and having to figure things out on his own. Team RWBY, at least, encountered one another very quickly, but Jean was alone for who knows how long. Well, probably 30 years at the very least, but probably at least a couple years before encountering Alex, someone else from Remnant, to give Jean a sense of idea as to when he is in the Ever After. And upon encountering Alex, maybe upon encountering other members of the Ever After, he found out what it was he was meant to do. With Jean being the last to fall into the crossroads, he knew that Team RWBY was going to arrive in the Ever After eventually. So when he arrived there first, he probably, at first, started looking for Team RWBY. Probably tried to find where they were, but realized eventually that they hadn't arrived there yet. Upon meeting Alex, he would have realized that they probably wouldn't arrive for a while, that things were different in the Ever After, and he's probably been waiting for them ever since. Fighting the Jabberwocker, helping where he can, and fulfilling some purpose that we'll find out soon enough. Jean is still Jean. 30 years older, but still the person that remembers Team RWBY, and has had many an experience in the Ever After since he last encountered his friends. So I'm sure there's a lot to catch up on, and a lot that will be explored probably in next episode, if not, well, of course, in the last half of the volume. There is so much to unpack here, and I'd love to know your thoughts down in the comments below. Do you think that Jean is the same Rusted Knight that appeared in Alex's story? I think it's pretty cut and dry at this point, but I'd love to hear if you have any other ideas. How do you think Jean is going to return to Remnant? I do think he's going to return, not that he's going to stay in the Ever After. I think there's still a lot that he has to accomplish in Remnant and other things to do, so I think he's going to return, but in what form? that's kind of left up in the air at this moment. So let me know your thoughts on that as well. And one thing I do want to mention here at the end, the reason why he was known as the Rusted Knight in Alex's story is either because he never revealed his name to Alex when he first encountered her, that he kept his helmet on, realizing that she was Alex, that she was going to write this fairy tale, and so just was the Rusted Knight and took on that moniker rather than giving his name, because that would kind of change at least one story in the history of Remnant, or he simply asked Alex not to include his name in anything upon returning. It seems much more likely that Jean just never gave his name in the first place, but it might be possible that Jean is actually the one who encouraged Alex to write that fairy tale of the girl who fell through the world. And that might have some implications for things on Remnant. Perhaps Jean affected some things in Remnant's past, made sure that history played out a certain way by sending Alex back with some little information here and there, or simply just encouraged her to write the fairy tale, The Girl Who Fell Through the World. Maybe. I don't know if the writers are going to want to go down that route because, well, that gets into, like, time travel loops, and if you change the past, well, then the future changes, and that creates branching timelines. We're already going into alternate worlds. I don't think we're going to venture down the path of alternate timelines. So, yeah, I'm going to cut the video off here before we start getting into that conversation. So let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe and join the Guild of the Eternal Flame. If you like No Game No Life, check out my second channel, The Daily Flugel. And, as I mentioned before, if you want to see some games played live, make sure to check out my Twitch channel linked in the description below. With that being said, though, I'll see you guys in the next video.